Hey guys, welcome back to the Back End Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vilches, and guess what, guys? We're back. I know we've been gone for a while, and that's because of internet issues. Been traveling, trying to get all of our storage organized and everything like that because we were running out of storage and we couldn't even record. Our cameras were kind of failing on us, and we don't want to give you some crappy content. I could have recorded just audio only, but I was like, for the people who like the visual representation when we're going over these podcasts, I don't want to take that away from them. So we just kind of delayed on everything now, but we're now back on schedule and we're getting right back into it. So if you're new here, we have 3 segments of the podcast. We're in talks of maybe possibly having a 4th one. You guys can let me know what you think of that. But right now, currently, we have the Purple Pill, which is where we talk about politics, world news, anything that's going on in the world. And then we have the Highlight Reel, where we talk about sports, entertainment, anything like that. And then finally, we have the Word, where we have our Bible study. And today is the Purple Pill, so we talk about politics. And boy, has a lot has happened. But I'm going to be kind of focusing on 3 different subjects specifically, possibly 4. Because there is a lot of information going on, so you probably have heard a lot of things. I'm probably going to briefly touch on a couple of subjects, but I'm going to be focusing mostly on what's happening in Israel right now. So before we start, I want to also briefly go over what's been happening in Peru, because I am Peruvian, so a lot of the stuff that's happening in Peru has been affecting my people and affecting my family, and I do want to go over it real quick if you have no idea what's going on. So currently we have had 6 presidents in the last 6 years. We have our first female president, and that was due to Pedro Castillo being impeached out of government, and that was because he was going to dissolve Congress, and they were in talks of impeaching our president, but they weren't probably going to be split on the vote, but Pedro Castillo went ahead and decided to try to dissolve Congress and to reform our Constitution and everything like that, which created an outrage within Congress, and Congress impeached him 121 votes to like 1, and it was pretty bad. So he was ousted, and then he was imprisoned, and then our new president took over, and she was the first female president. However, locals were not very happy about that, and they've been protesting for months now, and it's been getting really bad. They've taken over a lot of the areas of trade. They've taken over our borders and taken over the airport. About 40 protesters have already been killed. It's a pretty hefty subject. I want to have a bigger deep dive when we go into that, but right now we're going to be reading with the BBC report on this. So, police and military are preparing to mount a joint operation according to Defense Interior Ministries. Supporters of former President Pedro Castillo took the streets after he was impeached and arrested for trying to dissolve Congress back in December. They want his successor, the new president, the female, Diana Boltera, to quit and hold fresh elections. Now, these elections would have to be possibly in April, and that would mean we would have 7 presidents in the last 6 years. It's ridiculous. But the Ministry of Interior tweeted that blocking communication routes is a crime. Is that the 10 people that already died because of ambulances could not get through those roadblocks. So the Interior Minister is basically telling people, like, you can't block routes of communication, and the people that are dying in the protests, we can't get them through because of roadblocks, because of all the protesting happening. Now, my suggestion, because I've been to quite a few protests, something for safety caution for y'all is just like, if you do so, do it with some caution, because you never know who's going to get hurt. And yes, sometimes blocking roads and everything might send a point to the people that you're trying to protest, but there's also the potential of danger of endangering other people's lives, because maybe they are fatally wounded because of rocks being thrown, and they need to get to the hospital, but they can't because of roadblocks. So something to consider. Earlier in January, Peru's human rights watchdog reported 2 deaths as a result of blockades in northern La Libertad region, a 51-year-old woman and a teenager who lost her baby. The blockades have also resulted in a shortage of fuel, and food in several air regions, which, if you guys don't know, Peru is technically a third world country. Now, I kind of describe Peru as like it's like, okay, so the Peruvian politics works like this. There's Lima, the capital city, and it houses over 10 million people. It's huge. And then there's the outer regions of Peru. Now, a lot of the outer regions are more third world. Lima, it's like third world, second world, first world. As you start to get to the central cultural hub, which the people who know about Peru, that's kind of like Miraflores around that area. There's a lot of growth within there and a lot of businesses there, but there doesn't mean that Lima doesn't have the third world part aspect in their city. But because of the shortage of fuel and supplies going out to the regions, this could cause a lot of harm and a lot more deaths that could have been avoided. So local media reported that some cities had seen the price of food, such as potatoes and tomatoes, increase threefold because of roadblocks and have left delivery lorries stranded. Now, this is really bad when it comes to currency because it starts to rise in everything, the economics of everything. This is something that is, if anything, basically, if you want to take anything away, this is really bad for a lot of the people of Peru. The Peruvian National Police, the ministry says in a statement, with the support of armed forces, will unblock the national network of highways that have been subject of a state of emergency. Now, the government is very known to be using the military to invoke a lot of this, especially during the COVID policy. So I wouldn't be surprised if those militaries take to the streets with tanks and everything, trying to unblock. I've been there through the protests, and I can say they kind of get really brutal out there. So, but on Wednesday, Mrs. Bolaterra called for a national truce, but following her speech, thousands of people took the streets of the capital Lima demanding her resignation. Now, Ms. Bolaterra became first president in December following Mr. Pastillo's impeachment and removal from the office following a botched attempt to dissolve Congress. More than 50 people have died in subsequent unrest, which continues across the country. The government has been accused of using excessive force in its efforts to quell the protests. And Peru's Ombudsman said that of the 56 people who have died in the unrest, 46 were involved in clashes with security forces. Now, like I said, I've been there for those protests, and I can say they do get brutal. Peruvians do not mess around. They will gas them. They will do anything they can, and protests happen quite frequently, unfortunately, in Peru. The governors of the southern Puno, Cusco, and Apurimac regions have also called for the president's resignation, and earlier this week, opposition politicians submitted a motion to impeach Ms. Bolaterra. She has resisted calls to step down and asked Peruvians to ensure their protests are peaceful. The country's valuable tourism industry has taken a hit from the continuing unrest, with the famous tourist site of Machu Picchu closing indefinitely earlier this month. Hundreds of people were stuck for hours at the foot of the 15th century Inca cathedral before being rescued. The Economy and Finance Ministry estimated the economic cost to the nation of the protests 2.15 billion soles, which is $554 million so far. And that is the summary of what's going on right now in Peru. So please, prayers for my country. It is hectic over there, and I'm scared for my family and everything that's happening over there. Anyways, moving on to the secondary of our report. It's something a little bit more interesting that I do want to touch on. I feel like maybe not a lot of places are getting a lot of attention when we talk about this, but this is also reported by the BBC. It's about what's happening in Japan. So Japan Prime Minister says the country is on the brink of overfalling birth rate. So Fumio Kishida said it was a case of now or never. Japan's population is 125 million, which is a lot. It's estimated to have fewer than 800,000 births last year. In the 1970s, that figure was more than 2 million. Birth rates are slowing in many countries, including Japan's neighbors. This would include China, a lot of the other Asian countries. But the issue is particularly acute in Japan as life expectancy has risen in recent decades, meaning there are a growing number of old people and a declining number of workers to support them. Japan now has the world's second highest population of people aged of 65 and over, about 28%, after the tiny state of Monaco, according to the World Bank data. Mr. Kishida told lawmakers that Japan is standing on the verge of whether we can continue to function as a society, focusing attention on policy regarding children. Child rearing is an issue that cannot wait and cannot be postponed. He said that he eventually wants the government to double its spending on child-related programs, and new government agencies to focus on the issue would be set up in April, he added. However, Japan's governments have tried to promote similar strategies before without success. In 2020, researchers projected that Japan's population to fall from a peak of 128 million in 2017 to less than 53 million by the end of the century. The population is currently just under 125 million, according to official data. Japan has continued implementing implementing strict immigration laws despite some relaxations, but some experts are now saying that the rules should be loosened further to help tackle its aging society. Falling birth rates are driven by a range of factors, including rising living costs, more women in education and work, as well as greater access to contraception, leading to women choosing to have fewer children. Last week, China reported its first drop in population for 60 years. So, Japan is home, not only that, but Japan is home to the oldest population in the world. After the city of Monaco, it's recording fewer birth rates than ever before. By 2050, it could lose a fifth of its current population. Yet its hostility to immigration has not wavered. Only about 3% of Japan's population is foreign-born, compared to 15% in the UK. In Europe and in America, right-wing movements point to it as a shining example of racial purity and social harmony. But Japan is not ethnically pure as those admirers might think. There are Anua Hakario Akinawans in the south, 500,000 ethnic Koreans, and close to 1 million Chinese. Then there are Japanese children with one foreign parent, which include this reporter's own three. These bicultural kids are known as hafu or halves. They include celebrities and sport icons such as tennis stars Naomi Osaka. Popular cultural ideologies them as more beautiful and talented, but it's one thing to be idolized and quite another to be accepted. Now, I get what this report is trying to say, but I do want to bring up a few good points. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because some people will be like, okay, who cares about not enough people being populated in the birthing processes and all that. To put it simply, the reason why I feel like this is an important subject to talk about is because I feel like everybody knows, and if you don't know, then I apologize. But if you didn't know, in China there was a limited policy, so they could only have so many children. Any other children would have to be aborted, and they would not be able to have enough children. But now China is facing the same issue that Japan is also facing, where they don't have enough people to take over the workforce population, and people are aging longer. Because back in the day, people would die more regularly because of wars, because of famine, because of diseases and such like that. But since our society has progressed as a whole within medicine and agriculture and everything like that, we've been able to have healthier bodies, which would make us live longer. And because many more people are living longer, that causes kind of an issue, because now we have all these people who can't work because they're old, and we need to be able to feed them. But that requirement for us to be able to help those older people, we would ourselves have to be, we would also have to reproduce more people to take over those positions as we continue to age. And a lot of people say, okay, why is this an issue? Well, here's the thing. If people do not reproduce and they don't have enough kids to take over the workforce, this causes the economy to fail, and it causes the country to start to self-destruct in the long term. And you might say, okay, but why? Because there's nobody to work the fields, there's nobody to work the industries, there's nobody to work on any of the financial stuff. The population starts to dwindle because, like I said, Japan has 125 million, and it's projected that they birth only 800,000. That's a big, large margin of a gap of not having enough kids to take over the workforce. This goes back into this whole thing about family structure. This could become a potential issue, not just in Japan and China, but a potential issue here in America as well, because of the whole rise of live your life, don't have kids, and it goes on to many other issues which we won't go into, but I want to focus on the fact that promoting that sense of family. We need to have more kids, and in order for us to have more kids, we need to have a more positive attitude to what a family structure should look like. And the only way you can see how a family structure should look like is how a masculine and a feminine works within a family to create that social atmosphere for the children, and how that should look like. Because I feel like we're stepping away from what it is, of what feminism looks like, has progressed into a way different way than feminism used to look like, and masculinity has progressed in a way farther away from what masculinity used to look like. And the consequence of that is less children, a lot of other issues, especially with mental illness and everything like that. So something to consider, because it's like, so how do we fix this problem? It's kind of falls on us, since we are the future generations. Is we need to restructure what family looks like and potentially have more kids. Like Hispanic families, and especially Middle Eastern families, they have tons of children, and that will potentially become an issue for other countries, because now they have a lot of other people coming in to the workforce that overpopulates, not overpopulates, but basically it solidifies their positions in the future of a safety net of having people take over the workforce. Whereas other countries do not have that, we are falling behind. So something to consider, because I feel like maybe nobody talks about this enough, and I wanted to bring this to your attention. The final thing that we're going to be talking about is actually stuff that's happening in Israel right now. So Al Jazeera, this wonderful news outlet, I would highly recommend go and look at what they have to say. So on January 27th, Maram Humaid wrote this: Gaza City, a deadly Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank, has provoked grief and anger in Gaza. Rockets have been fired into Israel, and hundreds of Palestinians have taken part in vigils, rallies, and condemned what they described as massacre. After 9 Palestinians were killed in Israel's raid on Thursday in Jenin, armed groups in Gaza declared a state of high alert, calling the incursion a new Israeli crime against the Palestinian people. Following the announcement, 2 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel, an attack claimed by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They were shot down earlier on Friday by Israel's Iron Dome air defense system, and Israel carried out its air attacks on locations in Gaza that it said are used by armed groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Kadir Kabid, an Islamic Jihad spokesperson, said in a statement that the Palestinian people have been subjugated to an unprecedented killings and attacks by the new Israeli government in all parts of the West Bank amid the complete absence of international intervention. As long as Palestinian people are alone in the confrontation, Habib continues, we have no options but to resist with all that we have as the only way to defend ourselves. Israel had not carried out a raid on the scale of its operation in Jenin in years, but it's part of an intensified military incursions by the Israeli army into the occupied West Bank, which have killed at least 200 Palestinians in the past year. Hishma al-Hoto, who took part in the protest march in Gaza, said he was sending his support and solidarity to Jenin. We are very angry and sad, he says. The Israeli crimes against our people in the West Bank must stop. Gaza and West Banks are one heart. Hamas spokesperson Hazim Quazim told Al Jazeera that what had happened in Jenin was a war crime. The occupation crimes will not go unpunished, nor will it succeed in breaking the will of our Palestinian people. So everybody, we need to take a step back. In the last podcast, well, one of the previous podcasts, I kind of went over what was happening in Israel right now with the current politics of everything that's happening there, and the movement of more radical far right in the Israel politics that's kind of taking over the region and is causing issues for the Palestinians that are living there. Now, I also want to take even further step back. For those who don't know the history of Israel and the Islamic people, specifically Middle Eastern people, I do want to specify this is, as a Christian, and now some people might be like, okay, what does this have to do with anything? Okay, I'm about to make my point. I'm not shocked, and I feel like a lot of Christians aren't shocked about this, and it's very unfortunate. This doesn't justify what Israel is doing. This doesn't justify what Palestinians have done to Israel. This has become a larger problem of something that, like, whether you believe it or not, according to the Bible, if you look at where these descendants come from, so a lot of the Islamic people in the Middle Easterns are descendants of what this person's name is Ishmael, and the descendants of like Jewish people of Israelites are descendants of this man called Isaac, and they're 2 children of Abraham. Now, if you don't know anything about the Bible, this is a little history lesson for you. So Abraham was promised by God to have a child in old age, but his wife Sarah didn't believe this would happen and asked Abraham to take her handmaiden instead and have a child with her. and that child was Ishmael. And God was like, no, Sarah will give birth even though you're in old age, and that person was Isaac. Now, the problem is Abraham's disobedience towards God. God said, like, Ishmael will be blessed just as Isaac would, but Ishmael would be a wild child, and his people would be hated by many nations. So this is a prophecy that said that there was always going to be inner conflict between Ishmael's descendants and Isaac's descendants. They would always hate each other. They would always fight. And you kind of see that as time goes on. There's different names. One of them was the Philistines. With the whole story with Goliath, that was a descendant of Ishmael. And King David came and killed Goliath. So they've always had this inner conflict with one another. And they said that, and it's been prophesied in the Bible, there will never be peace with these two people. And that is like the one unfortunate thing. And like, I feel like it's important to bring up the awareness of what's going on over there and issues like that. But I also want to point out the reality of the fact that, like, there's never going to be peace between these two groups, like, ever. And some of you might be like, well, that's hocus pocus. I don't want to listen to that because I'm not a Christian and I don't believe in the Bible. I just want to point that out to you so you guys are informed in that, because I think it's important to realize the historical evidence of how this all even started, because I feel like we kind of get short-sighted. We kind of focus only on a short scale on everything. Some people like to say, okay, we're here now, we need to focus on these current events and what's going to happen in the future. And I agree with that. And some people say, but we also need to focus on the past and how this led to here. But they also kind of focus only on a small section of the past, and they don't focus on everything else. It's like you have to look at everything has a cause and effect. And if you look down to the cause and effect, it all started way, way, way back then with Abraham and his two children. And something for you guys to know about, because some of you probably have never heard of that, and I want to bring that to your attention. And I feel like that's important to know. Now, fortunately, as Christians, we know that when Jesus comes, when he comes back, there will be peace within our lands once again. So that is the hope that we have in our Christ. And something, if you're not a believer, something for you guys to consider and maybe dive into yourself. But the thing is, like, I want you guys to come with a willing heart to listen to that, because I think it's super important for your future and for your kids and everything, because your eternity is at stake. So moving on to what's happening in Israel. So because of these attacks, so remember how I say cause and effects. So Israel raided Jenin because there's a reason around Gaza Strip that they continue to fight over. After that, a gunman has killed 7 people near a synagogue in Israel's settlement in occupied East Jerusalem, before being fatally shot in an escalation of violence following a deadly Israel military raid in the West Bank a day earlier. So because of this guy comes out and shoots up a synagogue. After Friday's shooting, the Magen David Adam emergency service confirmed that 7 people were dead. 5 of them were men and 2 of them were women. While hospitals were still treating the 3 wounded, 1 in critical condition, what we understand, Al Jazeera, James Baines reported, what we understand happened was a car pulled up at the front of a synagogue and a gunman got out and opened fire. The figures we have now are 7 people are dead. Adding that the police said the suspect had no previous security record. The emergency response agency reported a total of 10 gunshot victims, including a 6-year-old woman and a 15-year-old boy. TV footage showed several victims lying on the road outside the synagogue being tended to by emergency workers. I heard a lot of bullets. Matel Elameh, an 18-year-old student who lives near the synagogue, told the AFP news agency. An earlier police statement said there was a terror attack in a synagogue in Jerusalem and that the shooting terrorist was neutralized. Police later said the suspect was a 20-year-old resident of East Jerusalem who had appeared to have acted alone and carried out the attack in an area that Israel annexed to Jerusalem after the 1967 Middle East War. It said he had tried to flee by car but was pursued by police and was shot dead. The attack comes a day after the whole thing that happened in Jenin. So after that, a 22-year-old Palestinian man also was shot by Israeli forces in the town of Al Rayam north of Jerusalem on Thursday. In a sign of potential for further escalation, the Palestinian Health Ministry said that 3 Palestinians were taken to hospital after being shot by an Israeli settler in an incident near the northern West Bank city of Nablus. And it added that a 16-year-old Palestinian was shot by Israeli forces in a separate incident on Wednesday succumbed to his wounds. Gaza fighters then fired rockets and Israel carried out air raids overnight, but the exchange was limited. So, cause and effect. They attacked the Gaza Strip. Somebody was upset about that. Shot up a synagogue. There's even further report with the BBC where they said 7 people were killed and at least 3 more were injured in the deadliest attack of its kind in years. 2 people were also injured on Saturday in a separate attack. So not only did that happen on Friday, someone shot up a synagogue. Another shooting happened on Saturday, but this attack was done by a 13-year-old boy. They said he had been neutralized but did not give any further details. The attack took place in Salwan neighborhood just outside of Jerusalem's Old City. The injured were a father and son who were in moderate to serious condition. In response to the 2 attacks, the authorities have positioned officers from a counterterrorism unit permanently in the Jerusalem area to promptly respond to exponential events whenever necessary. The man who attacked the synagogue on Friday was identified by local media as a Palestinian from East Jerusalem who police described as a terrorist. Speaking at the scene of the attack was Israel's police commissioner Kobi Shabadati, called it one of the worst attacks we have had encountered in many years. Israel worshippers had gathered for prayers at the start of the Jewish Sabbath in a synagogue in the city's Neve Yavo neighborhood and was leaving when the gunman opened fire at about 2015 local time. So, as you can see, this was kind of a big... The reason why a lot of people were a little bit more upset about this was not just any ordinary day. The synagogue shooting happened on the Holocaust Memorial Day, which... It's very sad that this is happening, okay? So, and this is just the inner conflict that's happening in Israel. So, right now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is... causing a lot of ruckus within Israel because he has far-right supporters. It's a lot of corruption, everything like that. Now we're seeing a cause and effect. There's a lot of infighting within Israel, within the Palestinians and Israelites as things are progressively, and then things are getting worse. America's response was they sent in U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who called for calm and de-escalation between Israel and Palestinians while reiterating Washington's ironclad commitment to Israel. Now, the reason why this is kind of frustrating to talk about is because it's like, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and like I said, you start to see the cause and effect of everything. I feel like both sides. And if you ever listen to documentaries between Israel and Palestine, one person will say one thing, the other person will say another thing and deny the account of anybody else. So whether you're a Palestinian supporter or Israel supporter, I would highly recommend you do further research and to come to the conclusion that, like, this is never going to end. And that's the unfortunate truth. As Christians, we know this to be true. But all we can do right now is give prayer and hope that all will go well over time. Anyways, that is it for now. But I'm a little exasperated because it is frustrating. So let's just pray about it. So, dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here together to be able to talk about this. I pray for your nation, your chosen people, that you will bring some peace to them. And I understand that you prophesied that there will never be peace with them, but bring peace to the families that lost their family members, because it is a tragedy. I pray that you will also help us reform our family structure and to keep it more Christian-oriented. Well, not even Christian-oriented, more oriented in the way that you want it. The way that a husband should be, how a wife should be, how a family should be structured. You have asked us to go out and be fruitful and multiply. Remind us of that commandment, dear Lord. I also pray for my country, that everything that's happening improve. Help all the people that are suffering from this especially the people on the rural areas, that they will recover quickly and help my family out there. And thank you for all that you've given us, dear Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys for joining this podcast. And we'll see you tomorrow for the highlight reel of the podcast. Anyways, pray for that. And please, please, please do your own research. There are moments where I will have bias reporting, and I admit that. But I want you guys to do your own research. And I just want to bring some awareness to certain situations. Thank you guys for joining. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.